Hey everybody, I hope you're doing amazing. So, I asked last week who wanted a little more info on the asteroids, and a boatload of you responded with a big yes. So, look, guys, in astrology, there are thousands of asteroids. There are thousands. I'm going to unpack seven. Okay, so you can see here we have CERES, we have Pallas Athena, we have Juno, we have Vesta. They have little asterisks. I'm going to explain the connection to Juno and Mars, this little picture here. Then we're going to discuss HYGEIA, PSYCHE, and EROS. And um, I do also get a lot of messages like, well, why don't you refer to Chiron as an asteroid? Because Chiron is a centaur. He is not actually an asteroid. So that's why we talk about him separately. Those of you who've been watching me for a while know I'm an evolutionary astrologist. So to me, the first thing I look at in anybody's chart is that Chiron, right? So Chiron is really important to note, but I'm not going to get into that right now. I don't know if you want to come if you want a video on your Chiron and on Chiron, leave it in the description in the comments below. Anyway, let's break out um, into the explanation of the asteroids. By the way, if you're joining me for the first time, welcome, welcome. My name is Jackie. I am a Western whole house evolutionary astrologer. So just want to keep that in mind, depending on some people get confused if they follow sidereal. So you just want to make sure, if you're going to be listening to me, that I do follow Western whole house. Now, in astrology, asteroids add a nuance and a depth beyond the traditional planets. And again, while thousands of asteroids exist, there are really only a handful that are commonly used in astrology as we know it. And it's really due to their very strong mythological and archetypal significance. So, we're going to discuss the most important asteroids, and there were four major ones discovered in the early 1800s, along with a few others that are being very actively studied, and they're rising in importance. I'd want to say that Hygeia is definitely one of them. But we're going to break out, we're going to address the first four first. And the reason is that, there is this passing between Jupiter and Mars, these personal planets. They're very interwound pretty tightly with them. So we do tend to feel the Ceres, the Pallas Athena, the Juno, and the Vesta pretty strong. Okay, but they do help to refine our natal chart. They do help to add layers of psychological insight, especially around feminine archetypes, especially these first four. But again, we are going to discuss seven. They do often illuminate themes not shown by the traditional planets, like how we relate, right? That would be Juno. I was going to say how we heal. That would be more Chiron. How we serve, right? That would be a Vesta situation. Just to give a couple of examples. Now, a big question before we get into this, before we get into the weeds of everything. Now, a lot of you might be wondering, like, where the heck do I find them in my chart? Because you might have run, for example, a free birth chart calculator, and the asteroids aren't on there. A lot of people do say that. So I can't really speak to, I just honestly, I don't know that much about them, but I'm pretty sure that astro.com and AstroSeek, if you use the extended chart selection and you click additional objects, you should be able to add at least some of these asteroids, right? Because I know some of them, I don't know why, I don't know why. A lot of them don't have, like Chiron, Ceres, a lot of them don't have Lilith. A lot of them don't have Black Moon Lilith. I don't know why. I mean, these are very popular and profound asteroids, but they don't. So, those of you who've worked with me privately, like you'll have your picture and you could just pull up your chart there. But anyway, astro.com, AstroSeek, you should be able to get it again under extra chart selection and additional objects. That's typically how it goes. Please don't come after me if that doesn't work, right? I'm just trying to give you some options. But and the other thing I wanted to mention before we get into talking about each of the signs, and I'm going to go real quick on, what it means to have it in which specific house. What happens if you have them retrograde? Because a lot of you will have your asteroids retrograde, and when they are retrograde, same thing with the regular planets that we deal with, right? It's very connected to this idea of inner work, of some sort of like unconventional path, karmic evolution around the themes that they represent, right? And we are going to go over the themes of which what each one represents. So these retrogrades, they don't signify weakness, though, guys. I mean, that's really, so a lot of people are like, wah, you know, I have this retrograde, Mercury retrograde, Uranus retrograde, and everything. It has nothing to do with weakness whatsoever. It really does show more of like, an area where you're turned more inward, you process things more in private, possibly feeling misunderstood by others. It's a source of deep soul work or personal transformation at some point in your life. And a lot of people with a lot of retrograde asteroids are often super introspective, very wise beyond their years, and can actually walk the road less traveled, kind of doing their own jam in their own way, especially in terms of like love and healing and service and creativity. And very often, actually, depending on the asteroid we're talking about, even sexuality, can be impacted in that way. But without further ado, as I go through each one, I'm going to speak about the mythology of each asteroid, what they represent, and then we're going to go through all 12 houses for each of these seven. Now, keep in mind, guys, the sign that you have an asteroid in, and this is a planet, goes for the planets as well. You want to know, what does it mean when you have it in that sign and or that planet? So, for example, let's say you have CERES in, let's just say, Aquarius in the second house. Okay, that would make you a Capricorn rising, right? So let's just say that you have CERES in Aquarius in the second house. You would look at CERES in the 11th house and or Aquarius, right? Because they're synonymous, Aquarius in the 11th house when we're doing the interpretation. And you would look at second house and or Taurus energy. They are the same. So if I say second house, it also equates to Taurus. If I say 11th house, it also equates to Aquarius. You don't have to memorize this. I'm going to say it as I go along, so I don't want you to worry about it. And I'm also going to have it in the description box below the video. So it's nothing to memorize here, but you want to make sure that you're looking at two for each one. Okay. The only ones that it might be a little different for is, for example, like if you have it in the third house and you have it in Gemini, those are the same thing. If you have it in the fourth house and you have it in Cancer, any of these placements, those are the same thing, right? But you want to look at for the house as well as the sign. All right. I hope I didn't confuse you guys. Without further ado, let's get started talking about the four main asteroid goddesses. I want to start off with Ceres. And the thing is, again, these first four that we're dealing with, Ceres, Pallas, Athena, Juno, and Vesta, they orbit between Mars and Jupiter, which is why I have this here. So they're very often interpreted as feminine counterparts to those planetary archetypes having to do with Jupiter and Mars, which is like expansion and passion and a lot, right? It's a lot. Mars and Jupiter are like a lot, right? So anyway, let's start with Ceres. So nurturing, loss, cycles, right? There's the key words here for Ceres are very connected to nourishment, motherhood, caregiving, separation, fertility, grief, as well as food. And you're going to explain, you're going to understand why once I explain it. Uh, and some of you might know that Ceres is very connected to Demeter. I'm going to explain that. But in the realm of astrology, Ceres holds significant influence, embodying themes of this idea again of nurturing, loss, and the cyclical nature of life, right? Named after the Roman goddess of agriculture, Ceres and her Greek counterpart, Demeter, this celestial body offers insight into the heart, really in the core of caregiving, being a caregiver. What kind of caregiving did you receive, right? And the complex dynamics of attachment as well as separation. And the myth of Ceres and her daughter Persephone, and a lot of you know the myth of Persephone, abducted by Hades, the lord of the underworld, resonates very deeply with the astrological interpretation of Ceres, where we're talking about profound grief in the absence of her daughter, caused, really caused the earth to mirror that energy of barrenness, that desperate vacancy that she felt when her daughter was no longer with her, right? No different than if something happened to one of us, right? And this ends up explaining the changing seasons, right? This is what we look to in mythology, this dynamic between these two, right? And this emptiness, right? Being without her daughter, the barrenness of it all. And we do reflect on that when we consider the changing seasons, in life right now. Now, within an astrological chart, the position of Ceres does provide a lens into your approach to caregiving, as well as your capacity for nourishment and support. It does speak to the way in which you nurture others as well as yourself, and it sheds light on issues surrounding food and your relationship with food, as well as motherhood. So, Ceres can also indicate where you experience challenges or blessings in like a mother-child bond, fostering a deep understanding of the complex emotions tied to the idea of attachment and loss. So, this could be the idea of mothering, right? And it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl, but it's this idea of, because we have male and female within us, but this idea of being able to do caretaker, have exercise caretaker energy and receive that, whether it's having to do with children, a pet, each other in life, right? That general energy. So it really is how we nurture, right? But also how we process loss. Because remember, Persephone, right? This idea of loss. So it's the intensity of that mothering love energy, but it's also that equal intensity of her needing to process that energy of loss, right? And so let's talk about Ceres through the houses. I'm just going to do a pretty quick run through. In the first house, so if you have Ceres in the first house and or Aries, so if you have it in Aries and or the first house, you nurture through personal presence, right? Because that's what that first energy is. That's what that first house energy is. That's what Aries is. It's personal presence. Others find comfort just being around you. Your identity may be shaped by early experiences of caregiving or loss. Sometimes a little bit of both, right? This is very, remember, we're born in the first house, right? So a lot of times people will have very fond memories or very dysfunctional memories, depending on what it's near and how it's placed, of very, very, very early life. Again, because we are born right in that first house. It also does comment, on how well we take care of ourselves, because if it's poorly aspected with something else, we could really beat the heck out of ourselves, right? We could just be very challenging, right? Having to do with how we perceive ourselves, right? And because if it's in Aries under the first house, that's an area that's ruled by Mars. And Ceres is one of them that's very, very connected to Mars and Jupiter, right? And so Mars represents war, right? And that first house is it's a house of self. Aries represents a self, right? That space of self and of coming to be, right? So we can tend to be a little hard on ourselves if it's negatively aspected. If it's very positively aspected, we could absolutely put caring for ourselves above other energies as well, right? Depending, right, on what else is. But generally speaking, having it in the first house, people want to be around you. They just like being around you. They find comfort just in your energy. Now we have the second house. So the second house and or Taurus. So if you have Ceres and Taurus and or the second house, you find security in giving. Your self-worth is linked to how you provide financially, emotionally, or physically. So this idea of being able to feel very secure, having to do with whether it's your money, your sense of self, just having enough stuff. I mean, that brings nurturance, right? It's absolutely so. It's not to say that you're going to do anything that you can just for money, but it is to say that it is a huge priority for you, and you also wouldn't mind being taken care of in that space, right? You find security in giving, but you also find security in that receiving, right? So you will give all day long, but you don't want it to be a one-way street. Now, that sounds ridiculous, right? No one does, right? But it will bother you a little more than the next person, okay? Absolutely. So it's very connected to that idea of, financial, emotional, and physical stability. Now, if you have Ceres in the third house and or Gemini, you are nurturing through words, teaching, listening. Siblings may have played a major role in learning how to give and receive care. Now, for some of you, it could have been siblings. Maybe you don't have any siblings and it was extended family, or it was your childhood friends, or it was just people in your neighborhood as well, maybe a really great neighbor. Because that's all third house energy. But this idea of nurturance, right? You are somebody who just like you just are a sponge for learning and words and teaching and listening. And you like doing all of that. You like listening, you like communicating, all of that. Again, if you have it retrograde, it might be a little bit of a different experience, but I will speak about that in a moment. Now, if you have Ceres in the fourth house and or Cancer, you are deeply tied to the maternal archetype. You feel most nourished at home, but may experience early family separation or emotional famine. And let me explain what I mean by emotional famine. What is what does it mean to have to experience a famine? It's barrenness. It's nothing, especially when it comes to fourth house energy. So it is not uncommon for someone with Ceres in the fourth house to ultimately reach a point in life where their family is not in their life, where there is this energy of emptiness in that space. Right? Doesn't mean that you can't reach out to other people. It doesn't mean that it's happening with your own children. I mean, it really would be more in that fourth house, it would be more having to do with like your first family, right? Where there inevitably ended up being some sort of like separation, right, at some point. And then because of that separation, that emotional famine. There could also be a lot of insecurity as well around like property and real estate and where it is that you live. Like just this whole idea of what it is that you call home, right? But I don't want you to be like, wah, wah, oh my gosh, what happens here with people with Ceres in the fourth house. And I'm going to tell you, I have mine in the fourth house. It's in the sign of Aries, but it's in the fourth house. And I can tell you that I had a weird relationship with my family for many, many years because, whatever. I was like, you know, astrology, studying Buddhism for a while. My religion was all over the place. I was all over the place, always happy doing my own jam. But, when your whole family wants you to like live within the confines of what they think you should be doing, um, a lot of times Sarah's in that space, especially because I have Black Moon Lilith in there. It's like, get out of my way. Let me do what I need to do. Right. But what does end up happening here with Ceres in this space is you end up creating your own home and your own comfortable space with, your own children. If you have children, your own pets, if you have pets, whatever it is that you consider a home, that does ultimately end up manifesting later on. Again, because the fourth house is really, when we're talking about Ceres, it really is very connected to like the childhood and that childhood experience, right? But that idea of emotional famine as well, it can be a thing with that first family, but it could also always be something that you're mindful of that you wish wasn't there, but you do grow to accept, right? That it is there, that it was there, whatever the case. Now moving on to the fifth house. So the fifth house and or Leo energy. So if you have Ceres in Leo or if you have Ceres in the fifth house, you express care through creativity or children. Love and affection may be very generous, but come with conditions or cycles of withdrawal. So there could be a lot of conditions around, um, what people are giving to you, right? And cycles of withdrawal could just be like cycles within life where you pull away from any sort of fifth house energy. So pull away from, fifth house very connected to our childhood. It's very connected to our children. So it could be periods where you pull away from your children, or your children pull away from you. But it is an area where you're actually quite good. I mean, if you have Ceres in the fifth house, you're very good with children. You are really creative, really, really creative. Um, and again, people want to love you. The generosity of the love is there, and it depends on what else is going on in your chart. How comfortable are you with the conditions that are put on that generosity, whether it's relationship or whether it's having to do with like being in business, because the fifth house in Leo energy is also very connected to entrepreneurial efforts, monetizable talents, anything like that. So, you can have all of these gifts, but then are the conditions that will be there for you to have your own business, for you to exercise your talents, gifts, and abilities in a way where you monetize them, where, are you going to feel restricted or not, right? It does depend on, again, other things in your chart, but it definitely tells me that you express your care through creativity or children, which to me is like it's lovely. And then if you have Ceres in the sixth house and or Virgo, you nurture through service and caregiving. Health routines may be affected by your emotional relationship to food or obligation. So again, that is for Ceres in the sixth house and or Virgo. Now, if you have Ceres in the seventh house and or Libra, you nurture through partnerships. There may be a tendency to give too much or rely on others to feel whole. Now, I will tell you that Ceres in the seventh is the beautiful thing, and the thing you kind of want to be careful of at the same time is giving way too much to your boss or bosses, or giving way too much of yourself in your day-to-day work execution, not your day-to-day work environment. I'm talking about like what you literally give of yourself in your day-to-day work with Ceres in there, because you're very nurturing and you're very giving. You can end up giving until you're empty. Over giving to a boss, over giving of yourself to your clients, over giving in that space. So, and you obviously you could be like that in relationships as well. So you have to be a little careful there. Um, Nothing wrong with giving a lot, but you don't want to forget to remember yourself as well, right? Now, Sarah's in the eighth house and or Scorpio. So care is intense and transformative in the eighth house and or Scorpio. You may grieve in private or experience control issues in your emotional exchanges. So it could be a very strong desire to be in control when it's in that Scorpio or eighth house energy. But grieving is usually it's kept to yourself. And then what can end up happening though, as you are keeping it to yourself, um, you can end up resenting other people. And it's not that you're intentionally resenting them, it's just that you're holding the pain inside, and it's got to go somewhere. It's got to go somewhere. So you do just want to be mindful of that. Now, if you have Ceres in the ninth house and or Sagittarius, you nurture through ninth house energy. So there's a lot going on there, right? Because that's where Jupiter rules. So, philosophy, belief systems, religions, any kind of religion, organized or otherwise, teaching. You may have found spiritual meaning through loss at some point. There could be a very interesting connection to father energy as well, where there's this very strong cord to father. And you say, oh, Jackie, we all have very strong cords to father. I was like, no, it's different. When you have Ceres in the ninth house, it's like it or not, that cord is there. Even if you never met your father, or you had the most amazing relationship with him, it actually doesn't really matter. I mean, it's going to matter in how it manifests for you, but that cord is there because the ninth house is the manifestation of father energy. All right. And I want to tell you what else is very good for. Having Ceres in the ninth house is great if you're a lawyer, if you're a politician, if you're anything having to do with the law, legalities, local governance, beautiful for teaching, like in higher ed. Um, CERES is really supportive of anything having to do with like publishing, marketing, advertising, launching something. You're very like you have a there's an energy about you that people want to be around and they'll embrace it in any of those areas. So, just connecting it to potential experiences at work, obviously. And speaking of work, let's talk about the 10th house. So 10th house and or Capricorn energy, that does rule your career, your public reputation, your standing in the world. So caregiving becomes a public identity or even your career, right? You can make a career of caretaking in one way or another, right? And whatever that means for you, whether you're like a home health aide, a nurse, or you're taking care of children, you're taking care of people who are in need and maybe some sort of rehabilitative space, anything like that is kind of in your wheelhouse. Even if you don't do that, you have a natural gift like for that. You may feel responsible for others in a very like either professional or maternal way, and sometimes both, where you'll feel this sort of maternal like energy for your coworkers. One of my sons has it in the 10th house, and he's always worried about the people that he works with. Are they okay? Are they going through anything? They go away on business trips. He's like the first one to check in, make sure everybody got home okay. It's very sweet. And they do love him for that. But I always tell him, like, you gotta stop, because he's a Cancer sun on top of it, right? So he's worried about everybody. But that could be you. That could be you if you have Ceres in the 10th house of Capricorn. Now, if you have Ceres in the 11th house and or Aquarius, you nurture communities, right? You nurture friendships, you nurture causes. There may be grief at some point in your life linked to groups or unmet ideals in friendships where you're like disappointed about your friendships. You're disappointed that you could have disappointment, experience a disappointment with an older sibling, a stepchild, a grandchild, a daughter-in-law, or son-in-law as well at some point. This doesn't have to be an end-all kind of thing, guys. It's an asteroid, but it does help to explain where there can be something, that kind of energy, some sort of grief or unmet ideal where you thought it was going to be a certain way and it ended up not being that. Now, the good thing about having Ceres in the 11th house, it's also the house of goals and gains. So you're able to actually nurture your goals and gains, which really, when we're talking about goals and gains connected to like money in the future, it's the ability to actually see the future and try to take care of what you need to take care of to be okay as you move forward into the future. So I happen to think for that, it's a very good placement. In general, but you're also very good at nurturing like any sort of humanitarian cause, anything that's dealing with the masses and other people. Also very good for anything in technology, anything having to do with advances in science or medicine. Those are also 11th house energies as well. If you're in the medical field, beautiful positioning to be a very nurturing doctor with good bedside manner. Okay. Now moving on, Ceres in the 12th house and or Pisces. Yeah, I mean, that's the house of the hidden guys, right? So private grief and spiritual sacrifice are the elements really of this positioning. You may feel unseen in your nurturing role or drawn to healing work in institutions or isolation. So when I say institutions in the 12th house, remember the 12th house where Pisces lives. It's where Neptune rules, which is connected to rehabs, it's connected to prisons, it's the sign of the nurse. It's very spiritual, it's very behind the scenes, right? But it is like this private grief and what we feel like a spiritual sacrifice, right? In that particular space, in the 12th house and or Pisces. Now let's talk about Ceres retrograde. This is very connected to nurturing and loss, right? But again, the idea we have to remind ourselves, right? The themes here are nourishment, mothering, grief, attachment as well as food, right? We're thinking like Mother Earth in this way, right? That food. So you may, if you have Ceres retrograde, so it's either it's got maybe a little R, capital R with a small X next to it, or it's shaded out red. These are the standard ways that you're able to see if your positioning is retrograde. You may question how to give or receive care to people, right? It just might not come naturally to you. Early nurturing may have been inconsistent or misaligned with your emotional needs at the time. There could be a deep internal process around food, body image, or caregiving. You might nurture others in private or non-traditional ways or resist being nurtured. Like, I don't need help. I'm good. Leave me alone, kind of thing. Um, and this positioning, when we have Ceres retrograde, this can often bring a karmic lesson around grief, around separation, and the cyclical nature of life in general. Okay, guys? So that's what I have for this Ceres energy, which is this first one here. Obviously, you can read it. Let's go on to Pallas Athena. So Pallas Athena is all about wisdom and strategy and justice, right? So very connected to when I say justice, it's like, yeah, it's kind of like connected to that Libra energy. It's like the feminine intellect. So it's intelligence, it's creative problem solving, it's pattern recognition. Pattern recognition meaning like patterns in relationships, right, that we deal with. Very connected to politics, fairness there, very connected to independence. So when we're talking about Pallas Athena, she embodies the essence of wisdom, strategy, justice, and she's named after the formidable Greek goddess of wisdom and warfare, obviously Pallas Athena. And she brings to light the realm of rational thought, creative problem solving, and the pursuit of justice. So within an astrological chart, looking at your birth chart, the placement of Pallas often incites into your ability, your capacity for intellectual prowess, your ability to plan strategically, your ability to exercise fairness in your life, and your sense of fairness, like how sensitive you are to the idea of fairness coming toward you, and how capable are you to exercise fairness to other people. So this particular asteroid highlights the importance of mental acuity, pattern recognition, again, in all parts of your life, and the ability to approach challenges with a calm and a calculated mindset. Pallas is chill. She is chill, chill, chill. She's chill, and she's always like looking at things. Is it fair? Am I good with this? I need to problem solve, right? Now, the myth of Pallas Athena's birth, many of you may know this, is from the head of Zeus, right? Um, fully armored from birth, right? Born from the head of Zeus. And this sets the tone for her, the astrological interpretation that we have of her. She represents a unique brand of feminine intelligence, one that's unclouded by emotions. There's a lot of practical, like air energy very connected to this. Yes, and I know you're like, oh, Libra is fairness. It's, very connected to relationships, very connected to politics, very connected to air, right? Because you remember Libra energy is the only sign where the glyph does not have a heartbeat, right? All the other glyphs have a heartbeat. And that doesn't mean that Libras are cold. They're far from that. I mean, two of my very good friends are Libra risings. That's not the case at all, but it's the ability to kind of step back from something and be able to go more air rather than water, right? Where you're going more mental in that mental realm rather than allowing the emotions, right, to kind of get in the way with things. So we have this idea of this, calculated, practical mindset, very clear, very logical decision making. Now, you have this, if you have, depending on where you have Pallas Athena, you do have a very strong tendency to be a very logical decision maker. So in your chart, her influence can manifest as a talent for diplomacy, a serious interest in social justice, what's fair, what's not, or even just a natural aptitude for independent thinking. She brings a gift of, again, this very analytical, strong, it's use the word keen, such good, the ability to think critically. Hello, I'm like dyslexic today. The ability to think critically is very, very amplified wherever she is, right? As well as the ability to navigate complex situations with grace and strategy, right? Now, Pallas's energy can be a powerful force for change and innovation wherever she is. She encourages individuals to approach life with a bit of a warrior's spirit, embracing challenges as opportunities for growth and transformation and nothing else. Growth and transformation. It's like, okay, this is happening to me. I understand it's happening to me. I'm going to problem solve it. I'm going to have grace. I'm going to be calm. I'm going to move forward. And she teaches the importance of balance, right? And weighing out the needs, of what's going on in your life at that point against the greater good of the situation. And by embodying the qualities of Pallas, you can navigate the complexities of all kinds of human interactions with wisdom and strength and a commitment to fairness as well as justice and whatever that means to you. So let's unpack this according to each house. Now, if you have it in the first house and or Aries, strategic all day long, perceptive all day long, and very poised. You embody wisdom and you tend to be a great problem solver instinctively. Very good at that. That's your jam, right? Very good at, okay, what are we going to do now? By the way, really good at, when we're talking about the first house or Aries, we're talking about Emperor energy. We're talking about the energy that allows us to have agency. It's where our ideas pop in. It's where we're like, fresh path, new perspective. I have great ideas. Let's go, let's go. You may not have the answers to everything, but the ideas are there. You have a natural ability, right, to kind of just come up with ideas and problem solve. Now, if you have Pallas Athena in the second house and or Taurus, you're a very practical thinker. You invest in ideas that have material value and you can strategize around finances or self-worth. And even having to do with your foundation, being able to manifest a strong foundation for yourself. You're going to figure it out. By hook or by crook, you're going to figure it out with Pallas in the second. Now, if you have Pallas Athena in the third house and or Gemini, excellent communicator. You are skilled at seeing patterns and you may thrive in teaching, in writing, and or advocacy of all types, right? It's not only one type, it's all types of advocacy. That's a very strong placement. Pallas Athena in the fourth house and or Cancer, you bring strategy and wisdom into the family unit. Likely a rational emotional processor, you may outthink your feelings, which I think is a little bit of a superpower. If you've got it in the fourth house, man, is that helpful? Because the fourth house is so emotional, but Pallas is so like, she's a thinker, thinker, thinker. I'm going to problem solve. I'm not going to allow the watery energy of the fourth house to wash over me to the point where I'm not able to think about things clearly. So it's excellent, especially for those of you who are parents. It's great energy for just figuring stuff out, having to do with the kids or the family or the larger unit, anything like that. Also really good if you're a real estate agent. In that fourth house energy. Now, Pallas Athena in the fifth house and or Leo, you express your intellect through art or children, creative solutions, and possibly an interest in educational or strategic games. Because again, remember, she's very connected to this idea of problem solving. The fifth house is the house of fun. So really, really great energy there for teachers, business owners, any sort of entrepreneur, any sort of entertainer, really nice energy there. And what I like about Pallas on the fifth, if you're an entertainer, you have a bit of a thick skin. Doesn't mean that you don't get your feelings hurt, doesn't mean that you don't get disappointed, but you're not going to take it quite as hard as the next person where it's going to be like, okay, I didn't get that role or whatever it is. Let me move on. Let me go after this thing over here, right? Now, if you have Pallas in the sixth house and or Virgo, your wisdom is applied in service. So you may work in healthcare, analysis, any sort of systems improvement, right? Because remember, the sixth house is day-to-day work environment, right? So improving the system in some way. Some of you maybe do something anywhere in healthcare. It could be like as a trainer, as a doctor, as a physical therapist, anything like that. Now, if you have Pallas in the seventh house and or Libra, um, you are a strategist in relationships. This is very good for work because that seventh house has to do with your boss or bosses. So you're very good at understanding how to like handle a boss or bosses. You're very good at handling that day-to-day execution of work. But you remember, seventh house is also our closest relationship. So ultimately, you do seek intellectual equals in relationships, and you often mediate or guide others, when it comes to relationships. So maybe you're a lawyer, maybe you're at least you're very good at mediating circumstances connected to relationship because again, remember wherever Pallas is, cooler heads do prevail. Now moving on to Pallas in the eighth house and or Scorpio, psychological insight is hella strong in the eighth house. You detect hidden motives and you may apply intellect in finance, therapy. This would be psychotherapy, not physical therapy, psychotherapy, or transformation. You'd also make an excellent astrologer, an excellent detective, but you can see you can see super quick people's hidden motives, right? If somebody's trying to play in some way, you can see right through it with Pallas in the eighth house. Now, if you have and or Scorpio, now if you have Pallas in the ninth house and or Sagittarius, you think in systems, philosophical, political, or legal, in some way, like a legal strategist, right? Anything like that. You see big patterns. You could see big patterns. So if you have Pallas in the ninth house, you are very good at understanding. Actually, in the eighth house or even in the ninth house, both of them are very good at recognizing like cycles in society. An eighth house would be financial cycles, but the ninth house would be like political cycles, cycles going on out in society, cycles having to do with um, even cycles having to do with anything connected to publishing, marketing, advertising. You just have like a natural gift in that space where you just kind of get stuff. You're very wise there. Now, 10th house and or Capricorn, you are what we consider to be a public intellectual. You may be seen as a very wise leader or use intelligence to climb the professional ladder in some way or another. Um, Yeah, and you're also very good at sort of rationalizing out how to deal with things having to do with mother energy sort of throughout your life. You're able to just sort of be very logical when it comes to her as well. Now, moving on to the 11th house and or Aquarius, you offer a visionary problem solving to social groups, to your friends, to you could deliver some sort of messages on the internet. You could do some great, fantastic problem solving having to do with advances in science, advances in technology, medicine, general science, problem solving. You could also be a problem solver for like, your grandchildren, your stepchildren, your daughter-in-law, your son-in-law, an older sibling as well. Very, very good for activism, policy, as well as mentoring. It's a very, very strong position there. Now, if you have Pallas Athena in the 12th house, this is and the energy of the quiet genius. is what I call it here. Very deep spiritual or unconscious strategies that sort of just come to you. There's a lot of wisdom gained through dreams, through intuition or suffering. And I do want to say that people with Pallas in the 12th house are typically very good at um, tarot, Reiki, uh, any sort of like crystal therapy, very good at meditation, anything like that. Very good. It's a very, very nice energy. Now, if you happen to have Pallas Athena retrograde, this energy of wisdom and strategy is directed more inward. So, ideas we're talking about here would be this idea of pattern recognition, again, with the intellect, creative intelligence, justice, also very connected to father-daughter dynamics. Um, Strategic or problem-solving abilities are developed inwardly, and they may ultimately end up emerging a bit later in life. Now, you may distrust or question conventional authority or wisdom. Creative solutions and intuitive insights come through your inner reflections and just kind of being by yourself for a while, putting yourself in solitude. You come up with things, right? You kind of go into your own space and you figure things out. The father figure in your life or masculine intellectual authority, whether it's your father, whether it's your grandfather, whether it's whatever the idea of maleness, right, may have been misunderstood or internalized in very complex ways. And that could absolutely impact how it is that you view relationships, right? If you have Pallas retrograde. The idea of social justice in politics or feminism may be approached in a very unique or possibly a countercultural way. So you may just remember when we have things, something retrograde, kind of do our own thing. So that wisdom, the way you exercise it, you kind of doing it your own way, right? Nothing wrong with that. Right? But just so that you understand, it does give a very different spin to the straightforward interpretation. Now we're going to go on to Juno, guys. Okay, so Juno is very connected to this idea of commitment and marriage and power dynamics. I feel like I talk about Juno a lot on my channel. So again, this idea of marriage and loyalty, but also betrayal and jealousy, and very connected to the feminine power in relationships. I feel like I did a separate video on Juno a couple of years ago. I'd have to look in my catalog. I don't remember. But anyway, when it comes to Juno, Juno was named after the Roman goddess of marriage and Greek counterpart Hera, right? And she sheds a light on the complex dynamics of long-term commitment as well as power struggles within relationships in general. So it's not only intimate relationships, just relationships in general. Now, the myth of Juno as the betrayed yet unwavering wife of Zeus sets the tone for understanding her astrological implication. So within your birth chart, your positioning of Juno provides insight into how you navigate the intricacies of loyalty, jealousy, feminine power in the context of your own partnerships. It highlights the unique needs and dynamics that foster respect and loyalty in all of your long-term commitments. And so, even though we typically associate it with marriage, not everybody's married or not everybody's in a serious relationship, but we have these close friendships. So we have these other people who are close. And so our Juno, we want to understand our Juno. So it helps us to understand and navigate those important relationships. Now, the energy of Juno can manifest in a couple of ways, from that fierce protector of your relationships, where you'll do anything to protect the relationship, to the complexities of power dynamics and betrayal. She does explore the delicate balance between independence and partnerships, revealing the strengths and the challenges that come up within committed unions. And by understanding the influence of Juno, you can gain a deeper awareness of your relationship patterns, recognizing where you may need to assert your power or surrender to loyalty and commitment, right? And try to identify, if there might not be a tendency towards imbalance there. And the placement of Juno in the chart becomes a bit of a roadmap to understanding your individual approach to long-term relationships, revealing the underlying current that shapes your experience of commitment, of loyalty, and the intricate power dynamics that exist within all of our intimate partnerships. And it's within all of that, right? So now let's go through the houses. So if you have Juno in Aries and or the first house, you define yourself through your commitments, the strong sense of identity in partnerships. This is very important. And I will add too that Juno in Aries and or the first house, it's like you want to have a little bit of your own space in relationships, but you also kind of want to be taken care of, and that's something that matters to you, right? Within relationship. Now, if you have Juno in the second house and or Taurus, you value loyalty and you expect material and emotional reliability in relationships. You're very sensitive to how your partner treats you. And as far as, you know, does your partner help build you up, or is your partner a battery charger or a battery drainer? That kind of energy, very sensitive to it. Now, if you have Juno in Gemini and or the third house, you need mental rapport in your partnership. Communication is the glue or it is the deal breaker. You have to be with somebody who knows how to speak, who knows how to communicate. Very, very important. You could also have a very generous energy towards your siblings and your extended family in your neighborhood and people in your neighborhood, your neighbors in your neighborhood. You can develop this ride or die kind of energy, right? At various points in your life, with Juno in there in that third. But regardless, I mean, what rises above even those tendencies that I just mentioned is this idea of communication. So important in your relationships. Now, if you have Juno in Cancer and or the fourth house, you seek stability and emotional intimacy in domestic partnerships. Family patterns may define your idea of loyalty with Juno in that fourth. Now, if you have Juno in the fifth and or Leo, you commit through love and creativity. Romantic loyalty is absolutely essential, but jealousy can easily come up. With Juno in the fifth, like you know how to do relationship, you know how to have fun, you're great with kids. Is a lot of really nice energy there. You can get very jealous, but also like if you have got to be friends with your partner, like straight up. Juno in the fifth house and or Leo, very, very difficult to deal with. How do I put this? And I've used this example on my channel before, but we're talking about Leo. Leo wants to be the king and queen of the jungle, right? And he wants to say, or she wants to say, you got to come to my castle. My castle has the best food. I have the most comfortable beds. I have it's decorated the nicest and whatever. It's comfortable. And I love entertaining. You have to come and hang out in my castle. And with Juno in there, Leo, Juno, or fifth house Juno wants to know that that partner wants to come and be in their castle. What will really get, like, I'm really upset, a Leo Juno or a fifth house Juno would be feeling like someone doesn't want to be in their castle, or if they have competing energies that they have to deal with, right? I do want to say as a general commentary that Juno in the fifth and or the sign of Leo is usually not a great positioning if you're looking for a relationship, a little later on in your life, where the person has children. There will usually be some sort of, it's not even like a jealousy, it's more like a feeling left out that you're just not going to be able to get in front of, right? It's very similar to having having Venus in the fifth and or Leo. It's a very similar kind of energy. don't want to share, right? You would not be okay if your partner was like, hey, I'm going to Cancun with the guys for 3 days. It's like, okay, when are we going? You know, it's you're not going to want to you're not going to want to have to, you don't want to deal with worrying about a partner. And you also don't want to deal with not being treated fairly or not being the center of things. Because remember, fifth house Leo, it's all about heart, but there's a lot of pride and there is a lot of egotism that's connected there. But with the way that we're talking about it, it doesn't mean that you're being egotistical. It just means that, you know, it's also the house of friendship, right? So it's a very, very connected to friendship. So, you know, you're this beautiful giving partner, but if you're with the wrong person, it could be torturous for you, right? Because you want to be included in stuff. You have a big heart. You want to love. You want to be best friends with your partner. You're going to love them. You're going to be that ride or die, be all those good things. But if they're not like that in, you know, in that way to you, it's going to be very highlighted. It's very difficult for you to tolerate that, you know, in a relationship. It will at some point be an issue. Um, Anyway, moving on, Juno in the sixth house and or Virgo energy, you serve those you love. Relationships may be based on mutual duties, shared routines, or healing. I think this is such a nice placement, right? Because it's all about give and take, and it's nice, and you get it, and nobody has to teach that to you. You understand it, right? Obviously, given if it's not negatively aspected with anything, but it is a nice space for Juno. Also, what it does mean is that because remember, a sixth house is it's Virgo's home, very critical energy. So you could be very critical of your partner and have very high expectations. But this is the thing: you might have high expectations, but you're not asking for anything that you would not give them. So you're fair. You are fair. Okay. We do have to say that. Now, Juno in the seventh house. Well, it's Juno's natural home, right? Because Juno is very connected to Libra in the seventh house. So you deeply desire committed, equitable partnerships. Um, you're very, very sensitive and very aware of any kind of imbalance within a partnership. And but you're beautiful in partnership. I mean, you get it. You have a natural understanding of what it is. Now, moving on with Juno in the eighth house, partnerships involve deep merging and power dynamics. You may have to address control. You may have to address secrets and loyalty. Now, the secrets and loyalty, when I say address, I mean it could be from you, but it could equally be something that you have to ultimately end up dealing with in your life from someone else. Like, are they being loyal? Are they telling me the truth? Are they being honest, right? Eighth house has to do with shared resources, Are they being honest with you know, how they feel, right? We have to understand that that's that eighth house energy. But you know, you're all about like deep merging, right? And really kind of, um, you know, it's a very passionate energy, right? Because passion and intimacy is that is the eighth house, but it's about merging lives with ideas and merging money and merging each other and all of those things. And that's what Juno wants in that eighth house. So if that's not being given, you know, that could be a little tricky to feel comfortable in that space in a relationship. Um, and then in the ninth house into a Sagittarius, you may marry or commit yourself to someone from a different culture. Um, or just you may connect to somebody based on mutual beliefs that you have. You know, it could be if it's not shared beliefs, maybe it's like a shared religion or you share the same politics. You know, you share something like that. Also, Juno in the ninth house. Very deep love for father energy, whether it was returned in a healthy way, whether it's aspected in a particular way, that's not the point here. But just having Juno, especially if it's not retrograde, if it's Juno direct in that ninth house energy, there is a lot of love between you and father energy. But when it comes to partners, you definitely want a partner who expands your world view. You also may be very, very attracted to someone who practices ninth house things. Maybe they're a teacher in higher ed, maybe they're a politician, maybe they're a lawyer, maybe there's some sort of like pastor, or there's some sort of like philosopher. There's some sort of, they're involved in travel somehow as well, dealing with foreign land and foreign travel, foreign cultures. You might be very attracted to somebody who's in marketing or advertising, anyone who's a writer as well, right? So we're all very ninth house energies. That Juno in there can have a very strong pull towards anyone in that space. Now, moving on to the 10th house, we have Juno would be in the 10th and or Capricorn. Your partnership impacts your career or social image. Public roles and shared ambition are key themes. So, an obvious and common one are people who have a partnership, business with their spouse. But even if you don't, there is an undeniable connection, or at least desire to have a connection when it comes to planning your life together with somebody, right? Being out there, seen together as a couple, very, very important, because it's not only career, it's also that social image as well. Now we have the 11th house. Oh, by the way, the 10th house, you can also be a little concerned with what other people think of your partner, that kind of situation as well. The 11th house and or Aquarius, you want a partner who shares your ideals. Now, you may commit within your social network or toward common causes, right, with a partner. But it also does indicate that friendship is an important part of your dynamic. Now, if you have Juno in the 12th house and or Pisces, secret relationships or sacrificial loyalty can be going on here for you. You may attract unavailable partners or learn from karmic unions. This is a tricky one, guys. I'm not even going to lie. Like this one, and even having like Venus in the 12th or Venus retrograde, it's kind of the same kind of situation there, right? Because what is that 12th house? What is that Pisces energy? It's very connected to secret relationships and this idea of sacrifice. Now, a really positive manifestation, though, of Juno in the 12th is that you could be, again, very good at uh, tarot. You can be very, very good at nursing, caretaking, and nurturing and cultivating people, whether it be your children, a partner, uh, really good friends behind the scenes. You could be a very good sense of support behind the scenes. Now, Juno retrograde in the areas of commitment and power, right, in partnerships, you may struggle with or resist traditional relationships and marriage structures altogether. A lot of I've seen that a lot. Juno retrograde, people don't get married, or there can be a deep desire for union, but with ambivalence or fear of losing your autonomy. And this idea, having a very interesting relationship with the word freedom and what that actually means when it comes to relationship. Karmic relationships are common as well. Past life connections or betrayals in partnerships can easily surface when we have Juno retrograde. A strong inner sense of devotion can be felt, but it might take time to find a relationship that aligns with your very values. And there could be lessons around the idea of loyalty to the self before commitment to others. So, that is the interpretation of Juno, guys. I hope that was helpful. Let's go on to Vesta. Vesta is very connected to sacred devotion and focus and inner fire. So this is the last one of the goddesses that really are very, very closely connected to Jupiter and Mars. So Vesta is named after the Roman goddess of the hearth, and very connected to her Greek counterpart, Hestia, and, which embodies this idea of sacred devotion, focus, and inner fire that drives us to, dedicate ourselves to something greater, some sort of higher cause. Now, within our chart, the placement of Vesta sheds light on our ability to concentrate on our energies really purify our intentions and devote ourselves to a chosen path or pursuit. She symbolizes the sacred flame that burns within, guiding us toward our true passions and our true life purpose. Very connected to that Jupiter energy, which does represent our truth. And the myth of Vesta as the goddess of the hearth reflects the themes of home and ritual, as well as spiritual focus. In ancient times, the hearth was the center of the home, right? It was absolutely a sacred space where family and sometimes even community gathered, together. So Vesta represents the importance of that dedication, not only to oneself, but also to community and the greater good of a community and of other people. So this devotion can take many forms, from a commitment to a spiritual practice or some sort of creative endeavor to passionate dedication to a cause or even a belief. And any of those things. Now, the energy of Vesta can manifest as a powerful force that drives you to pursue your deepest passion with focus as well as intensity. It really does encourage the purification of your intentions, letting go of things like distractions and negative influence, all of the unnecessary noise, right? And channeling your energy. Now, this is channeling even your sexual energy into sacred work or creative pursuits, right? That very rooted core energy that we do consider that sexual energy. And how do we kind of allow it to rise up, that fire to rise up, so that we can put it into something that deeply matters to us, right? Now, Vesta's influence may also be seen in people who choose a path of celibacy or spiritual devotion, where they end up ultimately dedicating their lives to a higher power or a cause that transcends personal desires, where it becomes less, that part of themselves just becomes kind of besides the point. And there are many people who have that. So let's unpack this in the houses. So if you had Vesta in the first house and or Aries, again, we're talking about the idea of devotion, purity, and sacred work. So in Aries and or that first house, you embody focused devotion. Tunnel vision, focused devotion. Personal identity may revolve around a cause, an ideal, or some sort of spiritual principle. Now, if you have Vesta in Taurus and or the second house, you are dedicated to values or resources. So you may abstain or sacrifice for long-term stability or sacred simplicity, right? So you might say no to that new car or no to the designer handbag, whatever it is, and abstain and sacrifice in those spaces just so that you'll have for later, right? Not a bad place, in my view. Now, if you have Vesta in Gemini and or the third house, devotion to words, siblings, extended family, communication, you may be a teacher. You may be a writer, or you speak with some sort of ritualistic purpose. So, and whatever that could be, but some sort of communication is something that you could feel very devoted to and feel very actually purified by. Okay. Now, having to do with the fourth house, Vesta in the fourth house and or Cancer, your home is your temple. You may guard your private life or be called to care for your family with sacred responsibility at some point in your life. Okay. Now, for those of you who have Vesta in the fifth house and or Leo, you dedicate yourself to your art or your children. Sacred, the idea of this, your children are very sacred to you. Your art is very sacred to you. Your business is very sacred to you. Your private time where you're dedicated to doing what it is that you really love. Your monetizable talents, your hobbies, that's like a sacred space for you with the fifth house, right? But I do want to say that, like, because it could go both ways, right? The sacred it plays, or this idea of the sacred, what it is that matters to you. You could also go through a period of abstinence from those very things. And the way I've seen it as an astrologer is where if people feel like they can't do what it is that they genuinely want with their monetizable talent or their business, or having to deal with even having to deal with that because this fifth house is also falling in love, love affairs, romance. They can't have that kind of relationship that they want. Um, if they can't have kids when and in the way that they want, they'll just abstain from it, you know. And it's not that they're being, it's if this is your placement, it's so not that you're being short-sighted or anything like that. It's just this is a very real emotion for you, you know, because whatever you would involve yourself in that's very connected to like fifth house into a Leo energy, you are devoted to. And if you feel like that devotion is not going to be something that's going to be fed back to you, not given back, but fed back to you, because you want to be fed by that part of your life as well, you would rather not even get involved in it, you know? You'd rather say no, you know, to that fifth house as well. Now moving on to the sixth house. If you have Vesta in the sixth house and or Virgo, you find sanctity in your work as well as your health. So you might be a little bit of a health, you know, a health nut. You might be a gym rat, go to the gym a lot, or you might just really be careful with what you eat, or you're somebody who throws yourself into work. Service becomes like this devotional act. So it could be service in the workplace or service to yourself, right? Burnout or over dedication is obviously a risk in that space. So you do want to make sure that you are not forgetting to remember yourself in that space. Now, when we're talking about Vesta in the seventh house and or Libra, you can bring purity and so much focus to relationships. You may either commit totally to a relationship or abstain emotionally. And that's that last part where abstaining emotionally, you could get into a relationship, but you never actually allow them to see the full you. And it's not even like you're being fake. There's a big difference between being fake in a relationship and just not revealing part of yourself. And what would prevent you from revealing part of yourself is if you feel like you can't really trust them. Where if you feel like you're going to be so devoted to them and they're not going to give you back what it is that you need to feel fed, you could stay in the relationship, but you're going to give just so much. You know what I mean? Um, but you know how to bring the focus and the purity to the relationship. So you're good. So you just have to be super careful with the individuals that you choose to get into relationships with there, that they're able to give you back what it is that you're looking for. Because you take relationships quite seriously, you know, as you should. Now, speaking about Vesta in the eighth house and or Scorpio, sacred sexuality or total emotional devotion is going on in here. Um, you may practice sexual transmutation or some sort of transformative um, service when it comes to intimacy. I have to be careful of what I say here because I don't want to, I mean, already what I said, I might end up getting um, flagged. But when we're talking about the eighth house, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? So you could be like really like into that within, you know, your connection and your relationship. Vesta in the eighth house, though, can also be this idea of being very devoted to having like shared resources, um, any sort of, you could be very good with any sort of shared resources, anything having to do with investments, anything having to do with the stock market. But you may abstain. You can also be a person you're like, I am never messing with the stock market. I don't trust it. Depends what else is in your chart. But it is this kind of thing where if you do it, like you're good at it. If you abstain because you don't feel comfortable with it, right? But there's no real middle ground here. We have Vesta in the eighth, right? It's kind of like an all or nothing because that eighth house, remember, is ruled by Pluto. It's a, modern ruler is Pluto, original ruler is Mars. So we got like there's a lot of energy that's going on in there that likes to control, right? So you're either doing it something full throttle or you're not doing something full throttle. So, same thing with that idea of like the abstinence, that we were talking about before. A lot of times people who have Vesta in the eighth, they will like get into the clergy or they'll just decide to kind of shut themselves down in that area, right? Whereas other people, it's like the opposite, and they are open to absolutely anything. Again, there's not a lot of gray when we're talking about Vesta. It's very black or white kind of in that space. And moving to the ninth house where Sagittarius lives, right? So it's ninth house and/or Sagittarius. Um, Having Vesta in that space, you are devoted to your religion, your philosophy, justice. You may take vows or, live for actively live for some sort of belief, right? Where it's like you feel very, very strong. We almost feel like you're living for some sort of political viewpoint, religious viewpoint, philosophical viewpoint. Do you know what I mean? Like whatever it is in that space, that true, it's actually very sacred house, and it's Vesta is very connected to sacred work and purity, and so whatever your perspective is in that space, again, not a lot of gray. It's very black, it's very white in that space. Now Vesta in the 10th house and or Capricorn, you offer a public service or sacred leadership. You're called to serve at a high level. You're often seen as a guide, as a role model, anything like that, right? So, yeah, I mean, a lot of like, pastors, priests, heightened political figures, because the 10th house is also the government. You get the idea, or even like someone who's like the head of a large corporation who's very supportive of the people who work for them. That's all very vested in the 10th house. It's excellent for leadership. It's great for leadership energy for those of you who have an interest in that. Nice placement. Now, Vesta in the 11th house and/or Aquarius, you serve your community. You serve your ideals within the community as well. Friendships may involve sacrifice or some sort of shared mission. So, somebody with their Vesta in the 11th might be someone who likes to protest, peacefully, people, please. Let's realign ourselves with what that means. Peaceful protest, nothing wrong with that. But you can like really connect with people in that space. But you can be very connected to just sort of um, getting involved in some sort of like group or organization movement, something where the masses are being impacted. This idea of connection, though, right? You could be devoted to the connection with other people. So that could be quite nice, if that's part of your experience as well. Um, you could also be very devoted to the idea of manifesting the kind of goals and gains you wish to attain in your life. And when I say that, I mean like retirement. What are you doing with your life over the next 10 to 15 years? And just trying to get all your ducks in a row. You could be very devoted to that, for sure. Oh, I actually am going to need to plug in my computer. My computer's going to poop out. Hold on, guys. Sorry. Sorry. Didn't even realize I didn't have it plugged in. Perfect. Okay, good. Okay, so let's talk about Vesta in the 12th house. Deep spiritual space, right? You may work in an institution, you may work in solitude, or as a mystic, or as some sort of spiritual servant. You might be a tarot reader. You may do Reiki, work with crystals, anything like that. Okay, really sweet space for that. Vesta retrograde. Things we have to look at here. You're called to explore devotion inwardly. So your flame, you feel it. You absolutely feel the Vesta flame because you can see the glyph of Vesta, the central energy, the central uh, piece here in the glyph of Vesta is a flame that's meant to be a flame. So you have that flame, but it just burns quietly, very internally. You may feel conflicted between sacred work as well as worldly obligation. There might be a divide between what it is, like whether it's whatever's sacred to you, whether it's prayer and meditation, your spirituality, whatever it is, and then what it is that you have to do out there in the world. Sexuality and spiritual purpose may be disconnected or experienced in very complex and nonlinear ways. You may require solitude to reconnect with your purpose. It's very real for you. You could be aligned with some sort of vocation and personal rituals that may develop slowly, but end up providing you with a very, very profound inner power ultimately. So really nice there. I think that's a pretty sweet one to have, retrograde. And let's talk about Eros next. So here's Eros with the heart and the arrow through. Very connected to erotic passion and creative urges, desire, eroticism, intense attraction, life force. Now, this is not one of the four goddesses, but these are very important. Eros, Psyche, and Hygeia are very important as well. So I just wanted to give some insight to these. This does reveal what you're passionately attracted to. It does indicate your style of seduction and where you express vitality as well as magnetism. So, Eros is named after the Greek god of love and does bring to light the passion and creative urges that reside within all of us. This is very connected to intense attraction between two souls, the life force that drives us, and the creative spark that ignites our passions. Now, within our chart, the placement of Eros reveals an individual style of seduction, your source of vitality, and the objects of your deepest desires. It highlights the magnetism and allure that you project onto the world, as well as the passion that really does fuel your inner flame, your soul's fire, right? Now, the myth of Eros as the counterpart to Psyche, which we're going to speak about Psyche in a few moments, the goddess of the soul, does set the tone for understanding the astrological implications of this particular asteroid, because together they represent the union of love and the soul, a sacred marriage that speaks to the deepest longings of the human heart. And in our charts, Eros's influence can manifest as a powerful force that propels us toward our true heart's desire, whether it be in the realm of romantic love or creative pursuits, or just simply a deep passion for a particular cause or endeavor in our life. Eros's energy is super potent. It's a very potent catalyst for transformation as well as self-discovery. And it encourages us to embrace our desires, to explore the depths of our own hearts, and to express our true selves without any inhibition. And by understanding the influence of Eros, we're able to harness the power of our passions, channeling them into very creative endeavors, right? Whether it's, again, a romantic pursuit or any area of life where some kind of bold expression of your true nature is required. So who can't love that? Okay, who can't love that? Now let's talk about Eros through the houses. Eros in the first house and or Aries. Guys, you radiate raw attraction all day long. Others are magnetized to your presence. Your erotic energy defines how you move through life. And I think you know that. Use it responsibly, people. Use it responsibly. Now, Eros in the second house and or Taurus, erotic power is tied to touch, taste, possessions. You may be sensual and desire loyalty through physical pleasure. It's a very tactile energy for sure. So you really love like good food, things that smell nice, things that feel nice, all of that. Now, Eros in the third house. Eros in the third house and or Gemini, mental stimulation is what gets it for you. It's what turns you on. You can seduce through your voice, you can seduce through your intellect or flirtatious banter. Very, very powerful energy when it comes to connecting with people. Now, if you have Eros in the fourth house and or Cancer, erotic energy may be hidden. It's the house that's ruled by the moon, right? It may be intense or influenced by your childhood, private but deeply passionate. So there might be some stories to tell about your inner life and about your earliest exposure to these types of energies. Now, if you have Eros in the fifth house, you love the chase. Fifth house and or Leo. You love the chase. It's all about the chase. Passionate, playful, and expressive. You seduce through creativity or performance. Okay. Very connected to one of those. You're also someone who can perceive your children as being essentially your life force as well. Nothing creepy or weird in there, just like your life force as well in that fifth house and your Leo energy. Now, if you have Eros in the sixth house and or Virgo, it's all about service and subtle acts of care. That can become quite the turn on for you. You may be aroused by competence or routines. This is like, this is like the, you know, like the wife who comes home from work exhausted and cranky, and her husband made her dinner and did the laundry. And it's like, in that moment, he is the hottest thing on the planet because he made dinner and he did the laundry. Come on, babe, let's go. Right. So those are definitely the things that get you going. Anything that's very helpful, you know? I mean, like at random acts of kindness go a very long way for you if this is your placement. I mean, forget the roses. If your husband washes your car, or if your kids make you breakfast in bed, it's just like, oh, that's so nice. Like, love is definitely a verb for you. It's not a noun to just kind of put on a shelf, right? So the turn-ons for you are like that. But also you like doing for other people to show your love, right? As well, right? It goes both ways. Now, if you have Eros in the seventh house and or Libra, you're turned on by intimacy and equal partnership. Eros becomes that relationship glue, can become an obsession. We have to make sure that we keep the scales of the seventh house, which is the home of Libra. We have to keep the scales balanced. Otherwise, it can become that real obsession. But intimacy and and equality within the partnership, this matters so much to you, right? If that happens to be, if you have Eros in the seventh house and or Libra. Now, if you have Eros in the eighth house and or Scorpio, high sexual intensity, I mean, for goodness sake, of course, deeply magnetic, but you may struggle with control, um, taboo kind of topics, or you might even struggle when it comes to like merging boundaries. There could be like enmeshment experiences here. Um, there could be, we have to be careful, Eros in the eighth, you know, um, sexual addiction can manifest here as well, using intimacy as a means of seduction and manipulation. And you don't really mean it in the moment. It's just kind of like who you are. So there's like not even a lot of thought behind it, but it's just something to be mindful of, um, in that eighth house. And also, the result of that, the result of that very high, into that high level of intimacy and the intensity in that space, because it's also the house of shared resources. The other side of exercising the very high intimate intensity is people open their wallets to you. And I don't mean that in a like derogatory way. I mean like because it's the house of like partners' money or shared resources. And there is this very tangible, almost intensity about you that's attractive to people, right? We just want to make sure that we keep it balanced and in control, right? Balanced and in control. All right, now let's go on to the ninth house and or Sagittarius energy. Desire is elevated through philosophy, through belief, through um, cultural difference, um, you know, curiosity fuels growth here. Um, and any sort of like erotic or exotic kind of curiosity, because it's a Jupiter ruled house. This fuels growth because it's the house of growth as well. So, very strong connection to people from foreign land, foreign cultures as well. I see that a lot, with the Eros in the ninth house. A lot of people are very attracted to people from just very different cultures. I mean, whether it's a different culture or a different ethnicity, whatever it is, or there's something that's very uniquely different in that space as well. Also in the ninth house, someone who's very smart is really going to do it for you. Somebody who has very strong established beliefs. Um, there could be a real draw to people that have power positions, like having to do with politics, anything in religion, anything like in higher education. Um, that hold some sort of prominent role having to do with like publishing, marketing, advertising, getting something out there to the world, lawyers as well. That's all ninth house, right? So your desire just sort of is very elevated around those types of energies with that ninth house and or Sagittarius energy. Now, moving on. Eros in the 10th house and/or Capricorn, your sexual energy plays into your public image or ambition. So you may attract power or seduce through status. If your Eros is in the 10th house and or Capricorn as well. Now, you may also have experienced your mother to be like that. I'm not looking to freak anybody out, but and that is just an option, a possibility, right? As the 10th house is the manifestation of mother energy. Now, the 11th house and or Aquarius, when Eros is in there, friends very often become lovers. We start to look at our friendships differently. Group dynamics may awaken some sort of passion within you as well. So in a very like non-sexual way, getting involved in some sort of group humanitarian effort or something like that, it like wakes up a whole new part of you. Um, and generally speaking, by the way, because the 11th house and Aquarius, these both of that energy is ruled by Uranus, which is very non-traditional. It's very non-traditional. So, that kind of energy, like erotic energy, may be non-traditional for you, whatever that means, right? So, maybe you're gay, or maybe you're bi, or maybe you're trans, or something like that. Or maybe you're just into different things, or but that shows up a lot when we have Eros in the 11th, because again, it's a Uranus ruled energy. Now, Uranus in the 12th and or Pisces. Ooh, this is don't tell anybody, right? I mean, this is very much about like erotic secrets and fantasies, very connected to mysticism. Now, you may express desire through dreams, through spiritual longing, where you keep yourself hidden, but it doesn't mean that it's shutting this down. Um, but Eros in here can also be very good for creative solitude, meaning being very creative behind the scenes. It can be very good like that, where you're getting all of that energy out in a very creative way in that space. Now, if you have Eros retrograde, right, this idea of passion and erotic life force is retrograde, the erotic energy may be hidden, it may be repressed or manifest in some sort of non-traditional or symbolic form for you, right, as something else. You may struggle to feel fully seen in your passion or to express it openly, right? You may feel like a little shy or a little quiet or not heard, right, in that way. Passion is internalized and it can emerge through art, through dreams, through mysticism, kind of very similar to that 12th house energy. This can often indicate powerful karmic or soulmate ties that are intense, that are private or taboo. Yeah, I will say that a lot of times Eros retrograde and Eros in that 12th house, seen in a lot of charts of people who are in like secret love affairs, are harboring these secret emotions, these secret feelings, it's common, right? In that space. But you need a safe space to explore the full depth of your sensual and creative expression. Otherwise, it will stay within you, right? So you need to find some sort of safe space, and whatever that means to you, to actually exercise those things. So hopefully that makes sense for you, to you. Moving along here, we're going to speak about Psyche next. So Psyche is this center one here next to Eros. Um, Psyche is all about soul and emotional vulnerability and growth through love, right? So Psyche, the name Psyche, is he's named after the mortal princess who won the love of Eros, right? Stands as a testament to the transformative power of emotional vulnerability and the growth that comes through intimate connections. So within your chart, Psyche's placement does hold a mirror to the soul, and it does light up the depths of your capacity for trust, for intimacy, and the evolution of your own self through trials and triumphs and even tribulations of love, right? This idea of growth through love. The myth of Psyche, who endured a series of tasks set by Aphrodite to reunite with her beloved Eros, becomes a metaphor, really, for the soul's journey towards wholeness and the understanding of our deepest and soul level longings. So, in your chart, Psyche's influence can manifest as a profound capacity for emotional exploration, as well as a willingness to undergo personal transformation through relationships, right? Really allowing that vulnerability when you're in relationship to actually change you. It speaks to the ability to open ourselves up to someone else. Again, to embrace the vulnerability and to navigate the complexities of the human heart. As Psyche's energy encourages us, all of us, into the space of self-discovery where we can learn to trust, where we can learn to heal and embrace the evolution of our soul through the experience of love in its many forms, not only romantic love. This is the kind of it, we're even talking about like how we can be changed forever by the love of a pet, the love of a good friend, right? It's not only intimate love. Now, Psyche, the asteroid, does represent that potential for profound personal growth as we confront our psychological depths and we emerge with a much deeper understanding of ourselves and as well as our place in the world. Now, the influence of Psyche goes beyond, again, romantic. It's be more than romantic love, as I just indicated. It's touching on all forms of intimate connections, including, like I said, familial bonds, friendships, relationships, just even to ourselves, right? It highlights the importance of emotional authenticity and the courage to face our fears as well as our vulnerability. So, by embracing the energy of Psyche, we're able to, and really actually invited to, embark on a bit of like our own hero's journey of self-discovery, where we confront our inner demons and we overcome the challenges and come out on the other side with a stronger sense of self, having forged a much deeper connection with our own soul. So let's go through the houses here. Now, Psyche, again, soul growth, trust, and vulnerability. If you have Psyche in the first house and or Aries, your life journey revolves around self-discovery through love as well as emotional growth. It's a very strong placement. Moving on, if Psyche is in the second house and or Taurus, your soul's growth is tied to your values and your sense of worth. Trust may be linked to security. If you have, and that would be second house and or Taurus, if you have Psyche in Gemini and or the third house, you express vulnerability through words. Siblings or learning issues may test your trust early in life. You may have had a speech impediment where you stuttered. There could have been some challenges early on in your education, but you end up learning and growing, right? But it did mess with your ability to trust, right? Because of those early challenging experiences. Now, if you have Psyche in the fourth house and or Cancer, your early family life shapes your sense of soul and connection. So deep emotional imprints from the past are happening here for sure. Okay, very, very deep here. So your relationship, if you have Psyche in the fourth, your relationship with your early environment and your first family color all of the relationships that you have in your life moving forward, as well as your sense of self and the way that you end up showing up in life in order to have a career. And I'm doing this because I'm saying fourth house opposes the 10th house, having to do with career and how other people see you. So it's an important placement. Now, Psyche in the fifth house and or Leo, love and creativity are your soul paths. Vulnerability arises in romantic expressions as well as in parenthood. So you can feel very vulnerable. Am I a good enough parent? Am I a good partner? There could be a lot of vulnerabilities around your arts, and if you're an artist or your monetizable talents. But this idea of love and creativity, it is your soul path, even if you might be feeling a little vulnerable about it. You have to weigh it out, but it's definitely a nice energy there. Now, Psyche in the sixth house and or Virgo, soul growth through humility, through health challenges and or daily service. Trust develops slowly through and by routine, doing the same thing. So I would say if you have Psyche in the sixth house and or Virgo, a lack of routine does not work for you. And guys, if you have a child, I don't care how little, the baby was just born, and they have Psyche in the sixth house into a Virgo, routine, routine, routine is so important for their health, mental, physical, emotional, right? Really important, okay? But that soul growth comes through this idea again of humility and very often through challenges either having to do with health or challenges in the workplace as well. Um, so the challenges can be overcome, but there is humility, right? It's like a slice of humble pie. If you at some point in your life when you have that placement. Now, if you have Psyche in Libra under the seventh house, you meet your soul through others. Partnerships are crucial for your psychological development. It's like a lifeline for you. It truly is. Now, remember, this idea, Psyche, is yes, it's soul growth and trust and all that good stuff. It's also vulnerability. So you can have this element of vulnerability in your relationships as well. So be very careful who you open your energy to for a relationship. And you could even feel vulnerable having to do with your boss or your bosses, You can feel vulnerable like in general when it comes to, but that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's not. It's, having the vulnerability and then saying, okay, how can I trust, right? How can I connect and trust, right? Because you become a better version of yourself And I'm not, this is not about you being codependent or any sort of enmeshment situation, but you become a better version of yourself when you connect to other people, right? Um, so I mean, th that's a solid energy for you in that seventh house and or Libra. If you have Psyche in the eighth house and or Scorpio, profound transformation through intimacy. You're very drawn to psychological depth, and healing from trauma is certainly an experience that you will be going through in your life, which is a good thing, right? Um, Now, when I say profound transformation through intimacy, um, there could be indicated here where there were like some challenges that are connected to intimacy early on, but then you heal from it. If that makes sense. So it's a good placement, right? Having to do with that. Um, But if you are like married or if you're in a very serious relationship, that those very serious, important relationships can seriously change you. And look, we're talking about transformation in the house of change and transformation. So, um, and it's shared resources as well. So you can be made so much better off because of shared resources from a partner. But you could also be drained from shared resources with a partner as well. So it does depend on what else is aspecting it, just to be fair, right, with the interpretation. Now, when we're talking about Psyche in the ninth house, this is soul growth comes through belief, through study, through travel. Your love expands your worldview. Especially your loving relationships kind of opens up the world. It wakes you up spiritually. This is such a lovely placement, ninth house and or Sagittarius, because it's through relationship where you just kind of you just become a bigger version of yourself, which is really quite nice when it comes to perspectives and experiences, you learn through other people and all of that. Now, if we have Psyche in the 10th house and or Capricorn, your public path reflects deep emotional evolution. So you may be seen as a guide, or you may carry soul lessons through your career, where you're literally kind of like playing something out, right? These soul lessons out through what it is that you choose to do in your career. Um, and it ends up being cathartic. It ends up being very healing for you as well, ultimately. Now, if you have Psyche in the 11th house and or Aquarius, your soul craves meaningful group connections. Friendships and ideals certainly shape your psyche, and how you frame the world and what it is that you choose to be involved with ultimately. And then finally, Psyche in the 12th house and or Pisces. This manifests very deeply, very deep private inner life. You heal in solitude through your dreams or karmic relationships as well. You may experience a lot of karmic relationships, and you may be vulnerable to this idea of karmic relationships as well. And it's through those karmic relationships that you end up learning so much about yourself, right? Now, if you happen to have Psyche retrograde, there's a deep internal journey of self-love and self-integration that likely manifests at some point in your life. But you may fear being truly known by someone else. Like, you could hide yourself, right? Because you don't really want anybody to really know you. Because if they really know you have this vulnerability where you feel like they might not really like the whole kit and caboodle of what I'm going to show them. So there could be, again, that vulnerability there. And Psyche retrograde in this here also calls for healing from past soul wounds, especially around betrayal and shame and any element of unworthiness, especially if it's in that eighth house. My goodness, you got to be careful. Eighth house and fourth house. Actually, any of the water houses, the fourth house, eighth house, and 12th house, especially there. around betrayal, shame, and unworthiness. And your path to wholeness may be kind of non-linear, involving a lot of like inner deaths and rebirths, where it's like definitely like onion kind of energy, right? As you're working through, if you have the Psyche retrograde, you just feel like you're like this onion with legs, right? Where you're just peeling away the layers of these things that need to be healed. And there's just, and you're always growing, right? So that part of you dies, but then there's something else that shows up that you need to look at, which is not a bad thing, guys. I mean, we're always supposed to be growing and learning, right? I mean, this is part of, why we're here. And also, if you have Psyche retrograde, trust and intimacy are developed inwardly, possibly through intense psychological experiences or relationships as well. So I hope that was helpful discussing Psyche. And we're going to discuss our last one now, Hygeia, health and holistic wellness. Let's unpack this here. When we're talking about Hygeia, I talk about her all the time in like all of my readings. Um, she warrants a much deeper exploration, I feel like, out of all the asteroids. She's named after the daughter of Asclepius, the Greek god of medicine. And this particular asteroid gives a significant insight into our health, into holistic wellness and disease prevention, right? She even looks like a medical symbol, right? Now, within the chart, the placement of Hygeia shines a light on our approach to our physical and mental well-being, revealing the practices and the behaviors that we gravitate towards to maintain balance as well as wholeness. So Hygeia's influence goes beyond like hygiene, right? Because a lot of people think it just stands for like cleanliness. She really delves into the intricate connection between the mind and the body as well, urging us to recognize the impact of our choices on our overall health. Now, the energy of Hygeia really pushes us into a proactive and preventative approach to wellness, just in general, right? She emphasizes the importance of tending to our inner temple and making conscious decisions that promote longevity as well as vitality. She serves as a reminder that health is not merely the absence of disease. It's not what she is, but a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. By understanding Hygeia in our chart, we can uncover the area of our life that requires greater attention and care, whether it be implementing healthier habits, addressing underlying issues, or seeking support for maintaining our overall wellness, just in general. The myth of Hygeia as the daughter of Asclepius underscores the importance of preventive medicine and maintenance of good health. So in ancient times, Hygeia was often depicted as a nurturing figure, symbolizing the healing power of nature and the intrinsic connection between physical cleanliness and spiritual purity, right? Like, cleanliness is next to godliness or whatever. So her influence in astrology encourages us to embrace a more holistic perspective, obviously, at this point, recognizing the interplay between the physical, the mental, and the spiritual aspects of our lives, and to actively nurture and care for ourselves in all of these areas and on all of these levels. Now, let's break it out. And what does Hygeia mean in each of the houses? So the first house and or Aries. Health and purity are integral to identity. You may project a healing energy or be focused on self-care. If you have Hygeia in the second house and or Taurus, you value wellness as a form of wealth. Health routines contribute to self-worth or material security for some of you. Maybe you even work in a health connected industry. Now, if you have Hygeia in the third house and or Gemini, mental clarity and hygiene are essential. You may advocate for health through communication or education. You may teach it, could be anything like that. Now, Hygeia in Cancer and or the fourth house, this is all about emotional hygiene being the key. Family patterns influence your physical and mental well-being. So where you come from is very connected to your health as well as your well-being. Now, when we do, I just want to say when we have HYGEIA in the fourth, it also makes us very sensitive to like health-related ancestral connections as well, right? So ancestral um, health issues can show up, in our DNA and our patterning as well. Now, if we're talking about Hygeia in the fifth house and or Leo, healing through creative or sexual expression, you bring wellness into love as well as play through a different lens. Playing with children can be very nurturing for you as well. There can be health situations surrounding the life of especially your oldest child. Doesn't have to be anything scary. We're talking more about like allergies and things like that, sensitivities to things and things like that as well. If Hygeia is in the sixth house and or Virgo, this is the natural placement, obviously, for Hygeia. You may work in a health field or be meticulous about your daily wellness as well as your daily habits as well. Now, when I say you working in a health field, remember this is mental, physical, and emotional connection. So it could be something literally in traditional health. It could be anything having to do with nutrition. It could be anything where you are helping, within the realm of psychology as well. Okay. Now, Hygeia in the seventh house and or Libra, you may attract healing partners or become a wellness guide for other people. Because remember that seventh house and or Libra energy, it also is very connected to your energetic output at work each day. So you could be a wellness guide, a wellness coach for other people. Health may be mirrored in your relationships as well, which is a fascinating phenomenon, right? Where you and a partner, if you've been with somebody for a long time, where you start having the same kind of like sensitivities, you start mirroring each other, even when it comes to like mental health and the way that we process things, just certain experiences, right, having to do with our mental, physical, or emotional health end up being mirrored, right, in relationship as well. Now, moving on to the eighth house and or Scorpio, this is about healing through detox. This is shadow work or healing through sexuality. You understand the link between illness and psychological death. You understand the connection between those, allowing something to go or not, right? You understand the patterns in that space. Now, also, the eighth house rules other people who we care about as well. So when Hygeia is in the eighth house, very often a partner's health can be, as well as the seventh house, actually, as well in Libra, now that I think of it. But other person's health can be a factor in your life as well. Something to consider, right, within your life as well. So there could be some sort of like need for a partner to detox, for your partner to do shadow work, for your partner to need to heal sexually or heal from the cycles of their life as well, right? Um, Hygeia in the ninth house and or Sagittarius. This is very much about holistic or integrative health systems appealing to you. If you have this particular placement, you may teach or spread wellness philosophies of some kind as well. Moving on to the 10th house, Hygeia in the 10th and or Capricorn, you are seen publicly as a healer or a wellness authority in one way or another. Your career may center on health, psychology, or medicine in one way or another. If you have Hygeia in the 11th house and or Aquarius, you promote wellness in communities. Friends may be healers, or wellness is your activist cause. You can be an activist for any cause that's connected to the idea of wellness and health care within communities, and or could just be something that you feel super passionate about. And going on to the 12th house and or Pisces, having HYGEIA in the 12th and or Pisces, your health may suffer from repression, stress, or a lack of boundaries. Spiritual healing is essential for balance. So meditation, anything that takes you into that space of solace and self, so important. Now, if you happen to have HYGEIA retrograde, we're talking about you may resist mainstream approaches to health or distrust all medical systems. Now, I want to say a lot of my clients do have HYGEIA retrograde. It's not an uncommon retrograde. So look, if you break your leg, you go to a regular doctor. But keep in mind, and I say this all the time, regular doctors traditionally are only given 1 semester of nutrition in medical school. And so much of what's ailing a lot of us is connected to food. So much is connected to food and what we ingest and what we're around and all of that stuff. So I don't want to get on my high horse about this in any way, shape, or form. But I do want to just say, if your HYGEIA is retrograde, you don't want to be a silly goose and not go to the doctor at all. If you're not feeling good, go. Get the diagnosis, and then you could approach it in a more non-traditional way, if you wish, right? If you wish. But there's definitely going to be a little bit of trust issues when it comes to traditional medicine if your HYGEIA is retrograde, especially if it's retrograde in the 6th house or the 2nd house. You definitely 6th house, 2nd house, 8th house. HYGEIA retrograde in any of those spaces, you have a really difficult time trusting uh, traditional doctors, traditional medical systems, let's just say that. Now, also, if your HYGEIA is retrograde, healing may come through non-traditional or inner-guided methods like dream work, energy medicine, intuitive eating, um, uh, acupuncture, acupressure, massage therapy, things like that. You could be prone to psychosomatic responses. Health is very closely tied to emotional and your emotional and spiritual state. I mean, we could say that for everyone, but especially if your HYGEIA is retrograde, definitely a thing there. Body-mind connection, absolute, is very profound in that space. HYGEIA retrograde is also connected to your inner purification and holistic balance are lifelong pursuits. You're somebody where you're always looking for that balance and the purification. You're always trying to find like the right mix of things and the right balance in that space. And you may carry ancestral or karmic healing gifts or burdens, one way or the other, right? So you can carry the literal medical circumstances from, your ancestors. But it could also be like the emotional burdens of your ancestors as well. You could carry those, right? But you do have the ability, you have these karmic healing gifts. So try to heal yourself, right? Inside of all of that. So, my friends, this is what I have for you when it comes to talking about the main asteroids. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys next time. Take care now. Bye-bye.